The Mecklenburg County election debates are a service of WTVI, Mecklenburg County, and the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The views and opinions expressed in these debates are those of the candidates and do not necessarily represent the views of WTVI, its management, Mecklenburg County, or the League of Women Voters.
PBS Charlotte and the League of Women Voters present Election Debate 2016.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WTVI PBS Charlotte. Welcome to the Mecklenburg County Commissioners District 6 Republican primary debate sponsored by PBS Charlotte and the League of Women Voters Charlotte-Mecklenburg. In the next 20 minutes, we'll talk with the two Republican candidates running in the Mecklenburg County Commission District 6 race. The questions were provided by the League of Women Voters Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and the candidates were not given the questions in advance. I will call on the candidates in random order to answer the questions, and they will have between 30 seconds and 1 minute to answer each question. And I'll tell you in advance, gentlemen, how long you have to answer those questions. If you would like to challenge your opponent, raise your yellow challenge card. You'll have 30 seconds to respond. Each candidate has 3 challenges during this debate. There are no opening statements, but each candidate will have the opportunity to make a 30-second closing statement. And now, let's meet the candidates in the Mecklenburg County Commissioners District 6 Republican primary. The candidates are Bill James and Joel Levy. Gentlemen, glad to have you both here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For our first question, Mr. Levy and Mr. James, with similar backgrounds in the area of finance, what makes you more qualified than your opponent to represent your district and Mecklenburg County as a whole? Mr. Levy, we begin with you.
Thank you. In my professional job, I've had to look at thousands of financial documents for municipalities across the country. Mr. James is a CPA. He's a fine CPA, I'm sure. It's not about qualifications for this particular issue. We are both well-trained in finances and will look after the finances of the county. But overall, I do believe that I have a diverse education in economics, law, and finance. And most importantly, I'm able to compare what has happened nationally across these thousands of municipalities that I have to do, because in my day job, I'm a senior research analyst, and that's my job.
All right, Mr. Levy, thank you for your response. Mr. James.
Thank you. Well, obviously I'm running, so I believe I'm the best man for the job. My background in terms of finances, I'm a CPA, as Joel said. I have an MBA from a Florida school, a bachelor's, and also an associate's. Got the CPA around 1980, practiced with Arthur Anderson, which was at the time a big 8 accounting firm. Then went to work for Price Waterhouse, and I left as a senior manager, which is the level right below partner. During my time on the board, I have established a bond fund, something I think Mr. Levy would probably appreciate. By setting up that fund, we was able to stabilize the county's tax rate, so when we issue bonds, we don't have to raise taxes for them.
All right, thank you. Our next question goes back to Mr. James. Mr. James, you say you are Mecklenburg's consistent conservative. How has your conservatism helped the citizens of District 6 and Mecklenburg County in your terms as commissioner?
Well, I think I've had a direct positive impact on District 6. For example, I have made sure during the time I've been on the board to build schools in District 6. Now, the advantages of building schools in District 6 is it's so far out, they're less likely to be bust should the school board happen to change their mind. There are an assorted number of parks, schools, and libraries that have been built in District 6 that were a result of my efforts to ensure that District 6 got its fair share of tax dollars. And even though all those things have been built, deep down, we still pay more than what we get back.
All right, thank you. Our next question goes to Mr. Levy. You favor term limits and have implied in your campaign literature that Mr. James has used his incumbency to cover a certain complacency, while you state you will be an aggressive conservative advocate to stop aggressive liberal tactics. Please explain.
Sure, thank you. I believe that term limits are an important part of moving forward. I believe that when people are in office for too long, and this is for any party or any person, they grow complacent. I think one challenge that folks have put forward about Mr. James over the years is that he has not, in recent time, been involved in the community, out at meetings. He's not a face that is seen amongst other people. And my concern with that is, and the thing that I like to change is, I want to make sure that the community gets used to seeing its representative amongst them. Because I believe that if I'm not the conservative voice at these meetings, whether it be uptown meetings, which don't necessarily view our particular or don't share our particular political beliefs, if I'm not the voice for conservative ideals, then who will be? And ultimately, I'm leaving someone else to develop the narrative for what a strong conservative is. So when I say I want term limits, when I say that I think that Mr. James has not been out there, it's not because I think he's been a bad conservative advocate. I think that he could be a better conservative advocate, and I could be a better conservative advocate if we were out there sort of on a daily, continuous basis.
All right. Mr. James, are you in favor of term limits? Why or why not?
Well, I tell you, I have been on record. I don't have a problem with term limits, but when you get right down to it, this is an issue that I think Joel and I have talked about back and forth in various media articles. Term limits are set by the state, not by the county. Conservatives can't go out and unilaterally say, we're going to have term limits, and then rely on liberals or Democrats to impose it on themselves. If you're going to have term limits, you should have to go to Raleigh, you have to adopt it. I think if that's a campaign issue for him, he should be running for the state house or Senate so that he could implement that. It's a little like the tolls debate. It's not that, I'm in favor of tolls, I'm opposed to tolls, but the fact is it's a city function. So term limits, fine, okay? But if you're gonna do term limits, it has to be for everyone. It can't just be conservatives saying, oh, well, we're gonna do term limits and then wait on the liberals to do it. And ultimately it's the state that does that.
All right, thank you, Mr. James. And I think we have a challenge from Mr. Levy.
So I don't think it should be a conservative term limits or a Democrat term limits. It should be a flat term limits. My question then would just simply be, you say that you're in favor of this and you've been in office for 20 years. Why haven't you lobbied Raleigh or tell us when you have to have this done?
Well, I did, as a matter of fact, way back when it started. But the fact is, the county is subject to the rules that the state has. For example, unlike the city, which has a municipal charter, the county follows whatever rules the state puts forward. So if there were to be term limits on county commissioners, whether it's Mecklenburg or whatever, there would also be term limits on state house and Senate leaders. And let's face it, Democrat or Republican, the folks in Raleigh do not want term limits. The bottom line is you can want to be an advocate for it all you want, but you're not going to be able to answer that unless if you really want that, run for the state house or Senate and go up there and introduce a bill.
Well, I would just say, Mr. James, laws have changed all the time in this country, and if people like the strong conservatives are not the ones doing it, then it's never going to ever change.
All right, and just for the record, we've got 2 challenges. Mr. Levy, you've used, and Mr. James, 1 challenge. Okay. Our next question is, how do you balance the demands of your district with the betterment of the county as a whole? Mr. Levy, we go to you first.
Well, I'm being elected to be the representative for District 6. So my first and foremost is for the constituents of District 6. And when it comes to balance, I do believe that the other district representatives will work hard for their people, and I'll work hard for ours. I think overall, it's my job to represent District 6, and that'll be my key focus.
Thank you, Mr. Levy. Mr. James, your response?
I agree with Joel on that. I represent District 6. I represent the people of District 6, the children of District 6. So I'm elected to put their interests above other considerations. Now, that doesn't mean I can't work with the Democrats or try to come up with policies that we can live with that they also agree with. So I do try to create an environment that's not hostile. Now, there's a difference between standing up for your principles and always kind of butting heads with people, I suppose. In a sense, I kind of get the impression that Joel kind of views me as a kind of a kinder, gentler version of a conservative, that I should be tougher, harder, and that I should aggressively challenge the Democrats at every turn. I think that goes only so far. the fact is we have a board that's got 6 Democrats and 3 Republicans, and no matter how much you try, it's not going to change.
All right, thank you. Our next question will go back to you, Mr. James. The county manager has said Mecklenburg County is likely to enjoy a surplus next year. How do you propose to use that surplus to help county residents?
Well, as a matter of fact, while we're having this debate, the Republicans on the county commission are having a sort of minority rebuttal to the State of the County address that the Democrats are putting out. And one of the things that we're suggesting is a 1 penny tax cut. Basically, we have about 4% worth of revenue, maybe 40 million that we have just from growth, meaning no tax increases or anything. And then we have some excess fund balance. And when you add those two things together, I believe there's enough to provide for the schools and these other normal operating things that we do, but also provide a penny tax cut. And so that's one of the things that, Matt Ridenauer, Jim Puckett, and myself have proposed that, we'll see how it goes. Like I said, it's 6-3, so we're a little bit outgunned.
All right, thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Levy, the question is, the county manager has said Mecklenburg County is likely to enjoy a surplus next year. How do you propose to use that surplus to help county residents?
So government shouldn't have surpluses. When government has surpluses, it means that it's taxed the people too much, and the money should go back to the people. So if that's in the form of a tax cut, a property tax cut, which is approximately 62% of the overall amount of revenue that comes in, that's great. So it's very simple. If we have a surplus, we should be giving it back to the people. If that's not possible, then the next best thing is we should be looking for ways to pay down debt. So either pay down debt or give it back to the people, because I believe it's the people's money and the people should have it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Levy. Our next question is, a proposal to allocate 50% of the county's revenue to CMS for both operating and capital expenditures, as well as for charter schools, has been floated. Would you support that proposal? Why or why not? Back to you, Mr. Levy.
So I have to know a little bit more about that proposal, but I will say this. I'm fully supportive of charter schools. I'm supportive of parents' choice. I'm not supportive of just blanketly allocating money to CMS, because I don't think that that's the right way to go about it. I think that if you look at how much money the county has spent on CMS, it continues to spend more money every single year, and CMS continuously comes back and say they want more. So while I'm a strong proponent of CMS, because we need strong schools means a strong educated community. It means that people want to relocate to Charlotte. When I talk to people around this nation and they say, you're in Charlotte, that's the place where everyone sends their kids to private school, right? I have to explain to them that CMS is yes, our school, but we're working on to make it better. I don't think more money is the solution. That's the Democratic response to everything, is just to spend some more money. I would like to see a more even-handed approach than just a flat blanket 50%, because in my mind, you have to justify that money. And whenever you have such hard and fast rules like that,
okay, I need to cut you off.
There tends to be graft and corruption.
All right, thank you. Again, the question is, a proposal to allocate 50% of the county's revenue to CMS for both operating and capital expenditures, as well as for charter schools, has been floated. Would you support that proposal? Why or why not? And we go to Bill James for your response.
All right. Well, first, a little background. The county currently provides about 46% of our budget, for operating and capital purposes for CMS. Jim Puckett suggested a fixed amount. He didn't particularly say 50%. Some of the Democrats said 50%. The effect of giving 50% would be to either raise taxes by 12-13 million or take money from other programs, parks, libraries, whatever, by an equal amount. And since I'm not in favor of either raising taxes or taking money from parks and libraries, then my answer would be no.
All right. Our next question is, teacher pay in North Carolina has dropped to one of the lowest in the country, and there is concern that effective teachers are leaving the state. Do you support an increase in the county's supplement to teacher pay in order to reverse that trend? And we are looking for a 30-second response. Mr. James, back to you.
If the object or the question is, should we increase teacher pay equal to what the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Association of Educators has proposed, the answer is no. The county provides a supplement. We are not legally responsible for funding education. The primary funder of education is the state. 2/3 of CMS's money comes from the state. So we provide a supplement, and when the state gives a raise, we usually match that raise with local dollars for those employees that are involved. So no, I'm not in favor of adopting a fixed salary schedule at the county level, because we would be usurping what the state's responsible for. We'd be letting them off the hook.
All right, thank you. Mr. Joel Levy, your response.
Thank you. I think this is going to highlight another issue where we're both conservatives, and so we naturally going to have a similar view on this. I am not in favor of just giving someone pay increases. My wife is a former teacher. She taught at CMS. I've taught at CPCC. I understand what it's like to be a teacher and understand what it's like to be inside those various classrooms. So it's not that I don't have sympathy for people who do an amazingly hard job. The question is, when it comes to just pay increases because they're benchmarking it to someone else, I have a problem with that, because ultimately the money has to come from somewhere, which effectively means tax increases, and I'm not prepared to raise taxes on District 6.
All right, thank you. Our next question is, a joint campaign by the city and county has shown some success in providing homes for veterans. How can that model be extended to other homeless people, and will you support the county in doing that? Mr. James, we go to you.
Well, I think that we have had some limited success in doing that. The problem is that studies show that 75% of the homeless either have alcohol or drug or mental illness issues, meaning there's a reason why they're homeless. It's not just they haven't been able to get a decent break. So the question then becomes, how much will the county put into it? Typically, the county doesn't do housing, but we do social programs, meaning we help people with their problems. So we manage welfare, whether it's food stamps or TANF or any of these other number of different programs. We also provide education programs via CMS and CPCC. So I don't have a problem looking at trying to reach out to the homeless, but ultimately part of the problem in reaching that population is the mental illness, the drug abuse, and the alcoholism that is the root cause of why homelessness occurs. I prefer to try to focus on trying to help the kids of the homeless to see if we can get them into school and become productive citizens.
All right, thank you. Again, the question is, a joint campaign by the city and the county has shown some success in providing homes for veterans. How can that model be extended to other homeless people? And will you support the county in doing that? Mr. Joel Levy.
Thank you. I think anyone who's lives in Mecklenburg County has realized that homelessness is a serious problem here. You can't walk uptown anymore without being stopped nearly every single block by someone asking for money, seeing people sleeping on benches. It's a real issue. I agree with Bill that we need to focus on the children of these folks, because that's the next generation. And often they're there through no fault of their own. Their parents have made bad choices. As you've heard people say, drugs or alcohol are often a factor. I'm in favor of looking for ways to fix this problem, because at the end of the day, I don't want to live in a community where we have such a strong problem. It hurts. It hurts the attraction of jobs to the area, and it's a black eye to the city. So yes, I'm in favor of trying to fix this problem.
All right, our next question, we'll go back to you, Mr. Levy, and we are looking for a 30-second response, gentlemen. The question is, the median wage in Mecklenburg County fell by almost 8% over the last 5 years, greater than the national average. What economic development solutions will you promote to address this decline? Mr. Levy.
So when I look at municipalities nationally that are doing well, it's jobs, education, and taxes. Okay, you need to attract strong jobs. You can do that through strong education, local education, and low taxes. I don't believe in giving corporate welfare out to companies as sort of incentives to come. I do believe that if you have the strong framework and bedrock in order to make this a strong community, jobs organically want to come here. We've seen that nationally everywhere. So median wages are falling because overall I don't believe that we're doing a good job attracting strong jobs, education, and keeping those low taxes within our community.
All right, thank you. Mr. James, your response.
Well, if the question is, am I in favor of raising the minimum wage for county employees, we really don't have any county employees that make less than a livable wage, however you want to define that. Sometimes people define that as $11 an hour, sometimes $15. If you're asking me whether I want to have a policy like $15 an hour, as some cities have done, no, the county doesn't do that. Cities sometimes do, but counties never do in North Carolina. So I do think that you have to consider what kind of job program you want. I'm opposed to using tax dollars for the most part. There are some exceptions to try to stimulate people to come. A low tax rate is the best way for people to show up in Mecklenburg and to create jobs.
All right, thank you. And now it's time for our 30-second closing statements, and we will begin with Mr. Bill James.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you all inviting us, WTVI and the League and everything. I'd like to say that I would ask for your vote this next few weeks. Primary day is March 15th, and I believe that I've done a good job at trying to keep taxes low and to defend the people of District 6. So I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Joel Levy, your response.
Thank you, and also thank you to the League and PBS for allowing us to be here today. WTI. I just want to say that I'm honored to be able to be on this stage because I believe the democratic process is an amazing thing. I'm not a career politician, and so when I have this opportunity, it just means a lot to me because District 6 means a lot to me. This is a place where I have my family, where I raise my children, and it's important to me that we have a strong district and a strong county. March 15th is the primary. I hope I have your overall support. Thank you, and God bless.
All right, thank you. And again, we want to say thanks to both of our candidates in the Mecklenburg County Commission District 6 Republican primary for taking part in this debate. For more information about the League of Women Voters, you can check them out online at www.goleaguego.org. We want to remind you to cast your vote. Early voting begins March 3rd, and the primary will be a little bit earlier this year on Tuesday, March the 17th. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to get out to vote.